Welcome to Truth Pursuit, Episode 2, Secrets of the Lightning Thief, Book Part 5. Now I'm going to get right into it. Let's go. On page 313, they're talking to Hades, and there's been a deception. Again, there's deceptions, always deceptions happening in the end times. It's something that happens a lot. Deception after deception. So I'm going to read you this. This is Hades talking. So what's missing is Zeus's lightning bolt and Hades' helmet of darkness. So I'm going to read this. Return my helmet now, or I will stop death, Hades threatened. That is my counter-proposal. I will open the earth and have the dead pour back into the world. I will make your lands a nightmare. And you, Percy Jackson, your skeleton will lead my army out of Hades. Listen to what he says when he says, I will open the earth and have the dead pour back onto the world. I'll make your lands a nightmare. Is Hades really threatening to open the bottomless pit early? That's what it seems like it. I mean, opening the earth does seem to be like he's opening the bottomless pit. So quick, I'm going to read Revelation 9:11 because it's a 9:11. Revelation 9:11 explains. It explains what it's going to be like when the bottomless pit opens. So it's so interesting. Hades is threatening to open it early, which is pretty bold because we know by prophecy it's going to happen during the end times when the Antichrist comes onto the world. So let's read Revelation 9:11. Okay, so it says, And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven into the earth, and unto him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose smoke out of the pit, as smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded by them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, either any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God on their foreheads. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months, and their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And in those days men shall seek death, and they shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. So what it's saying here, the bottomless pit will be opened, and demons all from Tartarus will come out, and from the underworld, as we see Hades threatening Percy, and it will be possessing people who are not saved by Jesus and who don't know him. So it's pretty bad. So that's another reason why it's so important to be saved, because when this stuff happens, you will be possessed by the worst demons, and one of them could be Chronos and the Titans. I mean, it is going to be so bad that people are going to try and kill themselves, but they can't. It's going to be so horrific and horrid. I just cannot imagine it. So, yeah, Percy Jackson probably realized, I better stop making this guy angry. He's probably going to do something bad. Yeah, so it's interesting. So Percy Jackson realized that Ares has made a scam. He put inside his backpack when they were leaving to go to Los Angeles the lightning bolt of Zeus inside his backpack, and he never realized the whole time. So let's read this part on page 322. Yeah, interesting number, 322. Okay, so we read here. So Percy Grover and Annabeth leave the underworld, and they find themselves back at Santa Monica Beach, where the nymph and Nereid demon said for them where they promised where they'll end up. So they end up at the beach, and they see that the whole area there's been an earthquake during Hades' wrath. So there's been a lot of damage, and it's the morning of the summer solstice, so stuff is hitting the fan now. And they see Ares, and now Percy realizes the truth about Ares. He's now really angry at him for what he's done and framed him for something he did not do. It's all part of the plan, and this is what Ares wants. He wants war against the gods, and he caused the war. This is another example how war and all these fake news stuff is all caused by the elite, the Satanists, and the Illuminati. It's all a hoax. They all do this because they want to keep the population down. They want to do this because they want to keep people distracted from all the child molestation and all the satanic sacrifice that happens all the time, everywhere around the world. It's all destruction. It's all part of the Matrix. And Ares is just a metaphor or simile for all of that. So it's so interesting, the character of Ares, how he reacts in this book. Let's read here. So, but they're your family, Annabeth protests. Ares shrugged. Best kind of war. Always the bloodiest war. Nothing like watching your relatives fight, I always say. So let's read. What's interesting about this, you should know that before the flood, the Watchers, as in the fallen angels, as a punishment, had to watch their children, the Nephilim, and those children's children tear each other apart. So it is this war, this big battle that these Watchers have to watch their children and their grandchildren kill each other as a judgment from God, is what the Greeks later stylized as the Clash of the Titans, or the War of the Gods and the Giants. So Ares wants this to happen again, and Ares, as you know, is Nimrod, and as you know, nothing is new under the sun. They want to repeat history. It's all the Bible even speaks that things going to be repeated as in the days of Noah when Jesus comes back in the last days. Look at this. Look how Rick Riordan is pushing this agenda here. How nothing is new under the sun. These Greek gods are all back again in the modern world, as in the days of Noah. There's war of the gods against each other, as in the days of Noah. There's giants and Nephilim, monsters and demons ruling the earth, and the Antichrist is coming, as in the days of Noah. It's all happening, nothing new under the sun. So you can see that. So Percy and Ares are going to fight. So there's going to be a nice little duel here. And there's something interesting here on page 324. There's some symbolism here I want you to realize. Now the fight begins, and Ares summons a wild boar. So let's read this. He snapped his fingers, and the sand exploded at his feet, and out charged a wild boar, even larger and uglier than the ones whose head hung above the door of cabin 7 at Camp Half-Blood. The beast pawed the sand, glaring at me with beady eyes as it lowered its razor-sharp tusks and waited for the command to kill. What is the wild boar? Well, really what the wild boar is, I'm going to give you a short backstory. So we know how Semiramis had a virgin birth, that is Tammuz. Well, Tammuz followed his father's Nimrod's footsteps as a mighty hunter, so he used to kill a lot of wild animals. But on his 40th year, I think, when he was hunting, he was killed during his hunting session by a wild boar. It's really symbolic. It represents the death of Tammuz and the 40 days fast. It comes from Tammuz, not from when Jesus is in the desert, so it came earlier. And it was because he was killed by a wild boar. Do you know how they got the Easter ham from? Because what they did on Easter, they used to get a wild boar and eat it to commemorate Tammuz's death. That's what they used to do before Jesus was born. It's the same thing. It's what Constantine did when Rome supposedly became Christian. He got Christianity and paganism morphed into one and said, there we go, now we can worship the one God, and we can still celebrate our really happy holidays of paganism. So that's what they did, and that's where all that stuff comes from with the wild boar. It's symbol for Tammuz. So that's that I think it also has connection to Set and Horus. So I remember a story about Set getting killed, or not Set turning into a wild boar and killing Horus or something. I need to quickly get that out and see if I can find the passage. There's something in here when it explains in the battle of Horus. Horus obviously is Nimrod, Tammuz, and Set, who many claim Set to be Esau, who cut off the head of Nimrod because he's red, and that's what the name comes from. So the wild boar, there's a story about a wild boar here. So yeah, so there's a picture here of the wild boar. Apparently it got Horus's eyes out. Set turned into a wild boar, so that's where the legend comes from. So that's interesting to know. So that's that page. Let's go on to the next one. There's another quick one, 326. Alright, so now they're about to fight, and Grover and Annabeth want to give him some help. Reconciliation, she said. Athena and Poseidon together. My face felt a little warm, but I managed to smile. Thanks. And take this, Grover said. He handed me a flattered tin can that he'd probably been saving in his pocket for 1,000 miles. The satyrs stand behind you. Ooh, you better watch what you're saying, Grover. What you're saying is that Baphomet and his demons are with you, Percy. So, Percy, you got Satan on your side. I hope you feel proud about that, because that's not going to help. You can't fight fire with using. You can't fight bad guys with bad guys. You need to fight bad guys with good guys, and the good guy is Jesus, and he's the only one. So, quickly on page 331, the Furies. I probably didn't cover the Furies yet, but I'm going to quickly do that now. The Furies are 3 half bat, half human hybrids, which are obviously demons and fallen angels from Hades' kingdom. They are called they attacked Percy earlier on in the book, and they're the first monsters Percy actually killed. So, and it's really interesting because they also turned into humans as well as using magic, and obviously refers to how the secret identity of how humans can be, especially the elite humans, are monsters. It's an interesting idea to think about. Alright, so let's go to page 234. Okay, let's read. It's funny how humans can wrap their minds around things and fit them into their version of reality. Listen to that. See, I'm going to read this here, it's going to be interesting. Carlin told me that long ago, as usual, I didn't appreciate his wisdom until much later. According to the LA News, the explosion at Santa Monica, which was caused by the battle between Ares and Percy, has been caused, according to the humans, the ignorant muggles, they like to call them, the ones who are not enlightened, it's been caused by a crazy kidnapper who fired a shotgun at a police car. He accidentally hit a gas main that had ruptured during the earthquake, which was caused by Hades, of course. This kidnapper, aka Ares, was the same man who had abducted me and 2 other adolescents in New York and brought us across the country on a 10-day odyssey of terror. Poor little Percy Jackson was an international criminal after all. So it's so interesting. And he got interviewed, and I'm not gonna read the whole thing. Got interviewed, people were like, how you feeling and all that, and how he had to make up a false story because they couldn't comprehend the truth. See how symbolic this is? No one can comprehend the real truth of our world, and the humans want to know what they think is true, but not what it is actually true. So, this is how ridiculous the news is, and this is why I never watch the news, and you shouldn't watch it either. They will only put stories out there that are completely pointless and just, makes no sense, and that and the change, and if something does leak, they always manipulate it and twist it and change the story, in order that it's not unusual to the dull masses who think we live in a boring world. So that's the reality of it. This is another Rick Riordan is showing us a metaphorical example of how the mortals or the masses who are sheep who are following in the Matrix are completely just cannot comprehend the truth, and the news just manipulates it all, and they're so blind they see stuff differently. And Rick Riordan's literally showing how blind we are, and we can't even see through the mist. That's how spiritually blinded we are. If you look for Jesus Christ and ask for discernment, you will see through the mist, and you will see the reality of our world, the spiritual battle. Because you remember, in Scripture it says our war is not against flesh and blood, but it's against the spiritual powers. So that's something interesting, and that's something Rick Riordan is obviously pushing the agenda of the Matrix and all this. So now I've got something really interesting next on page 337. Alright, I've got something extremely interesting for you guys here. Now, Percy Jackson goes to the Empire State Building and meets this man. I'm going to read here. Alright. 30 minutes later, I walked into the lobby of the Empire State Building. I must have looked like a homeless kid with my tattered clothes and my scarred up face. I hadn't slept in at least 24 hours. When I went up to the guard at the front desk and said, 600th floor, he was reading a huge book with a picture of a wizard on the front. I wasn't much of fantasy, but the book must have been good, because he took a long time for the guard to look up. No such floor, kiddo. Alright, what is this? What is this guy reading? Many suspect this book to be either The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, which, by the way, Rick Riordan loves The Lord of the Rings. It's inspired by Norse mythology, or Harry Potter. So remember, the characters in Lord of the Rings, we've got Gandalf and Dumbledore, who are really similar, and they're both wizards. Wizards, the practice of dark magic. But there's another connection here. Back in the Elizabethan area, there was a man named Dr. John Dee, and according to Era of the Three, spoiler alert, this is really significant, the spoiler, and it might spoil, Era of the Three, so click out if you don't want to be spoiled. Dr. John Dee is a host for Odin in this, and he teaches many of his initiates and secret societies about this. They actually talk to these angelic beings and got science from them and ancient secret knowledge and enlightenment. John Dee, he actually was considered to be the wizard of old. He's inspired by all these literally. He's an inspiration for literature, especially for old wizards, and he has been known for reinventing Enochian magic, which is one of the most extremely powerful magic. I mean, Setna will probably like it. I mean, he was the one who refounded the ancient Enochian mysticism and brought it to light. Same what Nimrod did. Nimrod did the exact same, but he did it with paganism and Chronide religion. That's what he did. But Enochian magic was even older than that. And this is what Dr. John Lee found. Now, I want you to watch this short clip about Dr. John Lee, because he was such a, he was a wizard. He was obviously part of the dark, secret societies, not a good person, but he inspired, or sort of he taught, or he taught Francis Bacon, who is another famous philosopher of the occult, and according to Era 33, he is a son of Odin, so it's all connected, and there's reasons why, because Francis Bacon wrote a book about the new Atlantis, and he is pretty much came up with these. I wouldn't say came up, but known idea that America could be the new Babylon or new Atlantis, because of its advanced technology and that. Because we know Atlantis was a land that was before the flood. So that's interesting. So I want you to watch this video from the documentary, a short clip called "The Illuminati Secrets and the New Atlantis." So I want you to watch this video, and it's extremely interesting. So, all right, and then I'll quickly move on to the next part of this page.
The problem we're dealing with here is that Europeans discovered an awful lot of information, and very important, good, solid information of sciences that had been, developed richly elsewhere and that were brought into Europe and were so threatening to Christianity that they had to be suppressed. We know what happened to Galileo, and we know what happened to endless numbers of Giordano Bruno and so many others in science. They had to go underground. So the process of forcing knowledge and wisdom underground created a lot of coding and a lot of buzzwords and a lot of secret gestures and terms that still aren't understood to this day. So Dee is amongst that group.
While men such as Galileo were persecuted for representing scientific knowledge, the secret societies of the Elizabethan era were in danger not for the knowledge they possessed, but how they obtained it, through occult practices of summoning spirits and conjuring demons. They were, nevertheless, determined to continue for the cause of science and learning. Dr. John Dee led the way in this arena. His method became known as angel magic because of his contact with spirits that Dee believed were sometimes good and sometimes evil. In a diary entry of June 8, 1584, Dee records a startling account. He claims that Kelly was greatly troubled when the angels tried to persuade him that Jesus was not God, and that no prayers ought to be made to him. They further claimed that sin did not really exist, and that man's soul simply moves from one body to another, in what sounds like reincarnation. Upon hearing this, Kelly was apparently distraught, and believed they had contacted evil spirits. Nevertheless, the angels provided Dr. Dee with gifts of knowledge. Dee was the first to apply Euclidean geometry to navigation. He built the instruments for and trained the first-rate navigators. He is credited with coining the word Britannia, or Britain, and his influence laid the foundation for what would become the British Empire. He made his own maps and is said to have charted the northeast and northwest passages in his attempts to increase the wealth of England by gaining access to the New World. And believe it or not, the New World has been secretly influenced by his example. John Dee is considered the original wizard. He was the inspiration for the character of Prospero in Shakespeare's The Tempest, and for Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus. In the modern world, Dee was the role model for J.K. Rowling's Albus Dumbledore in the Harry Potter books, the character of Gandalf in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, and even Ian Fleming's James Bond. Few people know that John Dee was the original Agent 007 in Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Ian Fleming got the idea for his designation 007 for James Bond from the fact that that was how John Dee would sign his correspondence when he was overseas working as a spy for Queen Elizabeth. He would always sign his name 007. And that's where the concept came in for James Bond. Because James Bond was originally intended to be kind of a modern day Dr. John Dee, although it never really developed that way.
While Dee's character continues to intrigue, some would argue that compelling the imaginations of literary minds was not his greatest influence. This image shows what appears to be a wizened old man, passing a lamp in the dead of night to a younger man in Elizabethan clothing. Baconians believe this old world engraving represents Dr. John Dee passing the lamp of esoteric knowledge and wisdom to his successor, Francis Bacon. Both Bacon and Dee were men of science, dedicated to the advancement of learning. Both men were members of the Rosicrucian Society, of which Bacon would become the chief. Like Bacon, John Dee believed that America was indeed the lost continent of Atlantis. But where did he get this idea? Was it given to him by his angels?
Okay, so Percy Jackson is now by himself is going back to New York to the Empire State Building, which is where Olympus is now in the modern world, which is interesting. So he's going there and he goes onto the elevator, goes onto the 600th floor, and then he finds out that he's like in another world completely. And he sees Mount Olympus, the home of the Greek gods and home of these Nephilim. This is probably the home of where the Chronites' second headquarters was. And we know where the Chronites are. They are the people, the original Nephilim, who pretty much established all the paganism that we get today. It's just Nimrod, all he did after the flood was just reinvented all this lost knowledge that Satan and the Chronites had established before the flood. So let's read here. I was standing on a narrow stone walkway in the middle of the air. Below me was Manhattan, from the height of an aeroplane. In front of me, white marble steps wound up the spine of a cloud into the sky. My eyes followed the stairway to its end, where my brain could just not accept what I saw. Look again, my brain said. We were looking. My eyes insisted. It's really there. On the top of the clouds rose the decapitated peak of a mountain, its summit covered in snow. Clinging to the mountainside were dozens of multi-leveled palaces, a city of mansions, all with white columned porticos, glided terraces, and bronze braziers glowing with 1,000 fires. So this is pretty much describing Mount Olympus. But what's interesting here, it reminded me of something. The floating cities. Remember, there's been proof of floating cities. People have been reporting to see some. In Magnus Chase, I think it was one of Magnus's friends said that someone in Boston before, like a really long time ago, said he claims in Asgard, the city of the Norse gods, floating in the clouds in Boston. This is the same thing, just in Manhattan, the floating city of Olympus, where the Greek gods are. So floating cities in the sky has been reported many times. Even today, there's been videos. Here's one in China. It's pretty recent. Now, many are speculating this could be just Project Bluebeam that is meant to be a show for the eyes. So Project Bluebeam, if you don't know what that is, I really urge you to read this article. Really just literally explains everything you need to know about Project Bluebeam. So quickly, I'm just going to explain. Project Bluebeam is completely created by the government, and they will they'll use it to create false events like alien invasions and the false second coming and all that. So create this, the greatest hoax, NASA's Project Bluebeam, and read this. I really want, if you're looking for the truth, you have to read this. I highly recommend it. It is so important, because this is probably what's going to deceive many people, because they're going to stage everything, even the prophetic events. They're even going to stage the sky when the sun turns black and the moon turns red. They're going to create a false version of that, and then the real version will come afterwards. So that's something you have to look at if you want to be in the truth movement. So yeah, that's that on that page. Now, next is on page 339. Right, so Percy Jackson has just reached the pinnacle of Mount Olympus, where all the gods are. So he's just entered their palace. This is what's interesting. I'm going to read here. Room really wasn't the right word. The place made Grand Central Station look like a broom closet. Massive columns rose to a domed ceiling, which was glided with moving constellations. Now we should know, what's the dome represent? Well, we see the dome everywhere. We see domes, for example, at mosques. So what does the dome really represent? Well, the dome is used as an used in esoteric architecture. We should know that. The exoteric architecture, they thought that the dome represented the universe. And what is interesting, if you believe in the flat earth cosmology, apparently the firmament is in the shape of a dome. So that's interesting to think about. Alright, let's move on. 12 thrones, built for beings the size of Hades, were arranged in an inverted U, just like the main cabins at Camp Half-Blood. Whoa, the U. Well, what do you? There's something interesting. There's some numerology and symbolism here. Look at this. Look at this here. This hidden knowledge. It's really subtle. The U is interesting. The shape of the U. Why is it the shape of a U? Well, guess what? I found out they used the shape of the thrones, and it looks like the crescent of. It looks like a crescent moon. The shape of a crescent moon that we see all over. You can go to the. Oh man, I can't. It's symbolism used by Freemasons. It's used by secret societies. Most of all, it's used in Baal worship. They use it for many of the moon goddesses and gods. But most of all, it's most well known for being a symbol of Islam, which shows the moon, which represents Semiramis, and inside the moon is the star, which also have to represent Sirius, the dog star, is the morning star. We know the morning star is Lucifer, but we should know the sun is also a star, and the sun represents Nimrod. Nimrod and Semiramis represents the sun and the crescent moon, because these two figures are what started the moon and sun god worship, and we see this not just in Islam but all over the world in many places in secret societies. No coincidence that it's in the shape of a U, especially when it's about pagan Greek gods who are in charge of the American society. So it's pretty much what many philosophers and Freemasons have predicted. They want these Greek gods and pagan gods to return in America. And they're right. Rick Riordan's pretty much demonstrating that. The dreams of these occultists. And we continue. An enormous fire cracked in the central half pit. The thrones were empty, except for two at the end. The head throne on the right, and the one to its immediate left. I didn't have to be told who the two gods were that were sitting there, waiting for me to approach. I came towards them, my legs trembling. Now, the gods were in giant human form, as Hades had been, but I could barely look at them without feeling a tingle, as if my body was starting to burn. Alright, let's prove this. They were giant human form. Again, just proves the fact that the Greek gods were Nephilim giants before the flood. These Greek gods existed before the flood. They never existed after. So people who think that Nimrod literally was Zeus is wrong, because Zeus existed before Nimrod even existed. Nimrod was shown as Zeus because they thought he was Zeus reincarnated. The spirit of these Nephilim just inhabit these bodies. Nimrod was just a host for them, and after that, Ahab, and then throughout history, there's been figures who've hosted these the spirit of these Nephilim that established a secret religion, and these two figures are normally male and female. I'll cover that in the Cain Chronicles, because the main two characters represents this trend that's been going on throughout history about the male and female characters who have established paganism and are really satanic individuals. So proves that they're Nephilim giants. So alright, so now for more info, if you want to know about the Greek gods being Nephilim before the flood and giants, you should look out for this channel called Hidden Human Story. She's a really amazing researcher. I mean, she's come up with I don't agree with everything she's come up with, but there's some really good ideas she has for the Greek mythology, and she's done a really good job. So I would highly recommend check out Hidden Human Story for more info about these Greek gods. Alright, next page. 342. Alright, so Percy Jackson is confronting Zeus and Poseidon, two main Greek gods. Obviously we know who they are. Zeus is the heir of Chronos. Chronos was originally the person who came up with all the knowledge of Satan on the paganism where we get today. Zeus came after him, and we know Poseidon's supposed to represent Satan and the pitchfork. So let's read this part. So Percy gives back the lightning bolt to Zeus, who's the rightful owner. Zeus opened his palm. The lightning bolt flew into it, and as he closed his fist, the metallic points flared with electricity until he was holding what looked more like a classic thunderbolt, a 5-meter javelin of arcing, hissing energy that made the hairs on my scalp rise. So, the lightning bolt. That has so much symbolism in itself. First off, I want to read this passage of scripture, and it explains many things where the lightning bolt comes from. This is the most obvious one and the most used, and it says, it's in Luke, and it explains how Lucifer is symboled as a lightning bolt, because it says, "Behold, Lucifer falls like lightning from heaven." Can't remember exactly what it says, but it's in Luke somewhere in the Gospels. But also, what's interesting to notice, that many satanic cults use the lightning bolt, especially for rock and roll bands like AC/DC and all that hard metal bands. Most of them, I should say, have this lightning bolt. Why do they have a lightning bolt? Well, if you look at history, the lightning bolt in the S, especially the lightning bolt shaped like an S, a double S, means Satan's servant. That's what it represents, and it is used to show representing his fall from heaven, Satan's fall from heaven, and they praise Lucifer for rebelling against God. They're praising rebellion. That's what it means. The lightning bolt represents rebellion. I want to quickly read here. The lightning bolt is a symbol for Zeus. Zeus is a Nimrod-like character. He's not literally Nimrod. You should know that. And guess what? There's another satanic connection. There's a fallen watcher, a fallen angel named Baraqiel. He was one of the 200 or the 20 archons of the 200 fallen angels that fell from heaven in Genesis 6. Now these angels then created the demigods and the gods and all the Nephilim and all the paganism that exists today. His name, Baraqiel's name, means lightning of God, and he taught men astrology, which is satanic. It's the false teaching of constellations, and he also taught the concept of the spear. Apparently, this angel Baraqiel is related to the Titan Iapetus, and if you read Percy Jackson, Iapetus is Bob, the supposed friendly or really innocent Titan who works with Percy Jackson in Heroes of Olympus and in the Sword of Hades. I'll cover that later in the series. So Iapetus is the fallen angel, Baraqiel, so Bob is the fallen angel. This symbolism in the modern world, it's used in the modern world. For example, it's used in pop music and heavy metal and all that. Alright, so now again, with Hidden Human Story, I really recommend. I'm going to put this video up. Watch this video made by her. It's really brief about Baraqiel, also Angel of Lightning. So we're going to watch that. And next we're going to move on to page 244.
Hey, I want to talk about this fallen angel Baraqiel, fallen watcher. I've already talked about who he is, that he is the equivalent of Iapetus in my books and websites and on my Black Sun video, and that he taught humans astrology. He was also the person behind the concept of the sphere, but he was also considered an angel of lightning. Now, lightning or the thunderbolt is also a symbol of Zeus, who's Jehovah. So you have to look at the context of how this is being used. But Baraqiel would have been a Titan. He is the equivalent of Iapetus, and he would have come before Zeus. And that whole system of that the Titans created was replaced by the system that Zeus and the Olympians created. But what is interesting is, as we have noted in my videos and work and other people's, there's a lot of this symbolism and in the occult and Hollywood and the music industry. And it's used over and over and over. And we know many of them were Luciferians, thus they worshipped Prometheus or Satan. But look at how David Bowie has the lightning bolt, and then Lady Gaga, and then the Grateful Dead, Marilyn Manson. And even now, they just named a star system in the shape of a thunderbolt after David Bowie. So they write their names and their legacy in the stars. This is their calling card. So I just wanted to point that out. This is how all this comes together. It's not just a mocking of Zeus, but this symbol of the lightning actually went back to Baraqiel, one of the fallen watchers, as well as astrology. Thank you.
Alright, so I'm going to read this. I described my dreams and the feelings I had on the beach, that momentarily breath of evil that seemed to stop the world and make Ares back off from killing me. In the dreams, I said, the voice told me to bring the bolt to the underworld. Ares hinted that he had been having dreams too. I think he was being used, just as I was, to start the war. Interesting. Ares had dreams of Chronos. Now, if gods can have dreams, then that means they are part human. This proves what Clement of Alexandria said: "Those to whom you bow were once men like yourselves." So he's literally saying these gods were merely just men who just lived for 1,000 years. Because you remember that as time progressed towards the flood, people used to live thousands of years earlier on, but as time progressed, the lifespan slowly shortened to 120, which is today. So the sons of, the grandsons of the people they will die, but their grandparents will still be living, and they will look up to them on their deathbed thinking, okay, these guys might be immortal. This is probably where we get all the immortal gods things from. They're probably just humans that just lived a long time in the pre-flood world. That's an interesting theory. I think this could be partly true. So I've got some stuff to explain here about it. Just in a quickly look. It's an interesting. Rob Skiba also touched on this in his works and presentations. So again, you have to look at the Bible at a mythological world view, and the scriptures in the Bible become much clearer if you understand that, especially when researching the Nephilim. You understand what's going on in the ancient world a bit better. So that's interesting. But I want to read something from Rob Skiba's presentation. I've got a quote here. We can see how several myths might develop. First, people who only lived about 200 years old would consider those living much longer to be immortals, and their parents, who apparently will never die, to be gods. But when the first 3 generations start dying off, rumors will develop about wars between the immortals and gods after the Tower of Babel. The legends would be more confused, because the languages got confused, adopted by others or inspired by others from each myth around the world. Interesting to consider that. And here's another one. Here's something from John 4 verse 23 to 24. But the hour is coming, and you have to be careful who you worship here. But the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and truth of the Father 6, such as these to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in the truth. So you have to be careful who you worship, and you have to know who you worship. Remember, people getting duped into worshipping what they think is Jesus, but really is Talmuds and Nimrod. If you can just see the Chronos hand gesture and the sun disk behind their head, or probably the race or the look of Jesus, because there's a debate about Jesus being black. Obviously he wasn't black, but he wasn't pale like this, like Zeus, because these Greek gods were pale white giants. They were white. We should know this. And most of them had red hair. So this white Jesus could be an homage back to the white Zeus or white Chronos back before the flood. So that's something interesting. And I also got one more thing to read out. So the next page. Alright. Now, it's about Chronos. Percy talks about Chronos rising from the dead. I'm going to read this out. An uncomfortable silence. Sir, I said, what is in that pit? This pit obviously is referring to the bottomless pit that's referred that will be opened in Revelation 9:11 by the Antichrist. Poseidon regarded me. Have you not guessed? Chronos, I said, the king of the Titans. Even in the throne room of Olympus, far away from Tartarus, the name Chronos stuck in the room made the hearth fire seem not quite so warm on my back. Poseidon gripped his trident. In the first war, this first war is obviously the judgment of God. Remember, these Nephilim and Titans and immortal human beings fought each other when God made them fight them for the judgment of the Watchers who created these beings, immortals. In the first war, Percy, Zeus cut our father Chronos into 1,000 pieces, just as Chronos has done to his own father Uranos. Zeus cast Chronos' remains into the darkest pit of Tartarus, which is also where the fallen angels went when they're bound for 70 generations. The Titan army was scattered, their mountains, fortress on Inter destroyed, their monstrous allies driven to the furthest corners of the earth. Furthest corners of the earth. If that will prove the flat earth theory, that means most of these monsters are in the other districts, especially in Jotunheim, which is where the land of giants is probably where most of these monsters that serve the Titans probably fled to Jotunheim, Muspelheim and Niflheim, and all these other districts and these worlds that the Norse knew are just on a flat earth model will make a lot of sense. So that could be where they scattered to. And yet Titans still cannot die, any more than we gods can. Whatever is left of Chronos is still alive in some hideous way, still conscious in his internal pain, still hungering for power. The spirit of Chronos is the original Nimrod spirit, and that has been, and again, I'm going to cover this in more detail in more books, but the Chronos spirit has been around on this earth since the beginning of time, and he is healing, I said. He's coming back. And Poseidon shook his head. From time to time, over the eons, Chronos has stirred. He has stirred. He has been influencing these Antichrist figures like Nimrod and Ahab. And he enters men's nightmares and breathes evil thoughts. He awakens reckless monsters from the depths of hell. But to suggest he could rise from the bottomless pit is another thing. That's what he intends, Father. That's what he said. Poseidon was silent for a long time. Lord Zeus has closed the discussion. Zeus does this. I mean, I realize Zeus always closed discussions on these rising threats. This is the first example. I don't know if Zeus is hiding something, which I think he is, but once we get to a Trials of Apollo, it just becomes too obvious. Zeus is obviously hiding something, especially when he banished Apollo, and I think he just got so mad he didn't even realize what he did. That's what I think. And if Rick Riordan says otherwise, I'll probably just have to discover something else. Because remember, Rick is probably knows the agendas and is pushing them. I'm going to read something on my notes that I wrote down here about Chronos quick. Alright. Chronos was literally the first king. Many say Nimrod was the first king, but he was the first king after the flood. The first king before the flood was probably Chronos. He was the person that began the chain of events that repeated it through history. He founded the Chronides and the paganism that was just reinvented by historian Nimrod. Again, I recommend watching Hidden Human Story about the Chronides and their cult and what they did. And she's got many other videos you can watch. I really recommend. Alright, that was a big one. Let's go to the next page. 353. It's interesting here. So Percy Jackson has just arrived home at his mother's house, in his apartment. There's something here. We would see how things stood at the end of summer. She kissed my forehead. You'll be a hero, Percy. You'll be the greatest of them all. Greatest of them all. That's a mindset. Many of these satanic magicians, they want to be the greatest of magic, the greatest practitioner of magic. And it's also an agenda, a New Age agenda that they push, saying you have to be the greatest, do the best of your potential, and you follow your dreams. That is a satanic agenda pushed by the elite, because they want you to do all this stuff, be the best you can without God, which is of course impossible. It's again another Tower of Babel. Tower of Babel, they try to do the best they can of making a high tower an achievement to God without God. And when God looked at it, he saw it as pathetic as an anthill. That's how pathetic our achievements are. I mean, it's you see how this with a godless society works. It's so just flawed. It will just fail, especially when Jesus Christ returns in the end times. Again, Percy's been idolized again as a hero Nephilim, men of renown, like we see. This is an indoctrination to get children to be heroes, to think that we can be heroes without Jesus Christ, and false idols to others. This breaks the first two commandments. The only superhero is Jesus Christ. So the first commandment says, thou shalt not bring other gods. The second one, I think, is thou shalt not use the Lord God's name in vain, I believe. Or is it, thou shalt not have any stone images. Something like that. Genesis 6 explains these Nephilim giants from the Watchers were men of renown, and the mighty men like Nimrod, the gods of mythology, Hercules, Odin, all these Horus, all these gods from mythology, name them all. I would say they were the mighty men of renown mentioned in Genesis 6. All of them were. And Percy is just been referred to as one of them, and he is one of them because he's got their blood. It's scary, Percy Jackson, you are becoming a Nephilim, and that is from his mother. He's supposed to be his most loving person. Society without God is something not good. It seems like these people just want to do all what they want, not what God wants, because you have to do what the Lord wants you to do. It's all part of Satan's New World Order. Next page is on page 356 and 357. Now, Percy Jackson is at Camp Half-Blood, and they're celebrating the 4th of July. We should know the 4th of July is not a holiday. This really just means nothing. Because we know all the presidents all related to each other. Their bloodline all goes to the person who did the Magna Carta. I can't remember his name, but remember, all these presidents are related to each other. It's the bloodline. They like keeping their bloodlines. We can see this in ancient Egypt. For example, Ramesses II had so many children, he wanted to keep the bloodline pure. These pharaohs these presidents are acting like pharaohs. They want to keep their bloodline pure. And the 4th of July just doesn't really celebrate anything. It just celebrates, the New World Order, pretty much. So on the 4th of July, the whole camp gathered at the beach for a fireworks display. A cabin by Cabin 9, which is a Festus cabin. Tubal Cain, who was another name for him, is a Freemason god. It's a satanic Nimrod god. If they're Festus kids, being the Festus kids, they were going to settle for a few lame red and white and blue explosions. They anchored a bark offshore and loaded it with rockets the size of parrot missiles. According to Annabeth, who had seen the show before, the blasts would be sequenced so tightly they would look like frames of animation across the sky. The finale was supposed to be a couple of 30-meter tall Spartan warriors who would crackle to life above the ocean, fight a battle, then explode into a million colors. Alright, these fireworks, why do they spread and look like a star when they explode? Well, again, it goes back to star worship. The worship of the morning star. Lucifer is mentioned as the morning star. It is the satanic pentagram is a star. Witchcraft and the fireworks is the shape of stars, and it all goes back to magic and paganism that is satanic and is utterly condemned by God in the Bible. I have to keep on going over and over again. Repetition is the key. The enemy uses repetition, so therefore I'm going to use it on the truth. Repetition on the truth works. So Grover is about to leave to search for Satan. It's funny, actually. It's not going to go well. Annabeth gave him a hug. She told him to keep his fake feed on. I asked him where he was going to search first. Kind of a secret. Oh, a secret oath of secrecy that Freemasons not allowed to tell the secrets that they learned to the masses, or else they'll be destroyed and killed in the most horrible ways. Satan is Pan. He's going. So probably Grover's probably going to get into dark, mysterious stuff on his quest that we don't know about. I reckon he tries to summon Satan the traditional way. So we're going to go dark and satanic. Yeah, Grover. Mercy on his soul, man. He's a hybrid. I mean, really, he's not going to do much now. I mean, he's got no hope. The poor boy. Or I don't even know what to call him. Is he a boy or goat or satanic demon? I don't know what to call him, because the Bible calls satyrs demons, because there are satyrs in the Bible. Remember, I remember a part in the Bible someone speaks to a satyr and they're demons. Alright, here's another part. Annabeth gave Annabeth another hug. He clapped me on the shoulder and headed back through the dunes. Fireworks exploded to life. Hercules killing the Nemean lion. Artemis chasing a boar. George Washington, who by the way was the son of Athena, crossing the Delaware. Oh, who is Heracles? Heracles is Nimrod, and he's also known as Gilgamesh. And he kills lions, obviously, because remember, the Nemean lion is shown. Hercules is killing, but also Gilgamesh is seen as killing lions. So coincidence? No. There's a lot of proof. The mighty hunter hunted lions. It goes back to Nimrod. Artemis is another form of Semiramis, and her son Tammuz was killed by a boar. Remember that? So I find this interesting how Artemis is chasing the boar, almost if getting revenge on this creature that killed her beloved son, who's supposed to be a reincarnation of Nimrod. Interesting. Now George Washington is supposed to be, everyone's supposed he's a Christian, but he was a Freemason. That was the son of a Greek goddess, and he was a worshipper of the Greek old mysteries of Babylon. He is a satanic is satanic, and Rick Riordan is literally saying to us that America was not Christian founded. It was founded by Freemasons and occultists. It was founded by Nephilim, Semiramis, and Columbia, which is another name from Semiramis. I recommend watching this documentary about, if you want to know about how founding of America is not Christian, watch this documentary called Illuminati Secrets, The New Atlantis. I recommend watching that, and it's got a lot of good info, so check that out, please. And now we're going to move to page 362. Okay, so now let's look at the next page. So Percy Jackson is at Camp Half-Blood, and everyone's leaving, so it's the end of the summer period, and everyone's about to leave to go to, well, back to reality. I guess what they call reality. So Percy's preparing to leave, and he goes and finds Luke Castellan training by himself. So I want to make a little connection here. Now, that his sword wasn't swirling around. I could see something odd about it. The blade was two different types of metal, one edged bronze and other steel. Luke noticed me looking at it. Oh, this? New toy? This is Backbiter. Backbiter? Luke turned the blade on the lights so it glinted wickedly. One side is celestial bronze and the other is tempered steel. Works on mortals and immortals both. Well, what's so interesting about this? Well, I just happened to find a connection. This name Backbiter has an interesting definition, and it has a connection to this agenda that's being pushed by the Satanists and elitists. So backbiter is a term from the Greek word diabolos, meaning adjusting and making changes. Satan does this for a counterfeit kingdom on earth. So let's just think about this. Diabolos, backbiter, means adjusting and creating changes. What are the changes that the New World Order wants? They want to create a one world government, a one world religion, and one world currency. That's the changes, and those are going to be the result of Satan's counterfeit kingdom on earth. So remember, the real kingdom of God is not of this earth, but of heaven. Satan's kingdom is of earth. So that's interesting to think about. But what's even more intriguing is Luke Castellan is serving as a catalyst for change and making changes for the Chronide religion and re-establishing the lost Chronide religion. So this is what Luke's doing. Luke is sort of acting as a sort of Nimrod character, and Chronos is whispering in his dreams, telling him what to do. And now he's using backbiter as not just a metaphor, like it can be a metaphor, or the sword could be a metaphor for, or simile, for the changes and the establishment of Satan's counterfeit kingdom on earth. Also Chronos' Chronide religion, returning and making changes to the world forever. Now that's something intriguing. You could say it's a coincidence, yes, but just think about it. If it was a coincidence, why does it still work? You can still make a connection. The word backbiter in Greek, remember this is a Greek mythology, and in word Greek it means diabolos, and that word alone has this connection to the New World Order agenda. I don't know, but I don't think it's a coincidence. I mean, Rick Riordan might have an idea of what is going on. If you have the discernment, you can see things like I can. Let me read this here. I thought about what Chiron had told me when I started my quest, that a hero should never harm mortals unless absolutely necessary. I didn't know they could make weapons like that. They probably can't, Luke agreed. It's a one of a kind. Now, what is the they that they're mentioning here? Because they is in italics. What's the they? as in the Chronites, the Triumvirate Holdings, or the New World Order 3, and the you know the New World Order in general, the elitist. These are the people who have the advanced technology from the fallen ones, the Watchers, the fallen angels, who will be released in the last days, and we're living in those days right now. So that's interesting. This sword could be a one-of-a-kind weapon created by advanced technology from the fallen ones. Interesting. Alright, now, next page is on page 360. Okay, so now, Percy Jackson and Luke have decided to go, or have a last-minute hangout with each other. So they get a 6-pack of Coke and go into the woods to, hang out for the last time. And Luke Castellan then all of a sudden deceives Percy. He summons a pit scorpion, obviously a scorpion from the pit, the bottomless pit. It's an abnormal scorpion. It's a bit of it. The name tells us what it is. And then it climbs onto Percy's leg. And Luke pretty much reveals that he is the lightning thief, and he was the one all along that stole the lightning bolt and gave it to Ares, and he's the one who did it, and framed Percy for being the thief. So this is the bloody fate Luke was foretold back in 2005 in the diary of Luke Castellan, that Halcombe Green told Luke his future is dark, and he was going to be the catalyst for the first Antichrist, Chronos. Let's read this. I couldn't believe what was happening. Luke, you're talking about our parents, I said. He laughed. That's supposed to make me love them? Their precious Western civilization is a disease, Percy. It's killing the world. The only way to stop it is to burn it to the ground. Start over with something more honest. Let's read this here. What is interesting about this is this almost pokes fun at all dispensational Christians that want the world in flames as well, because this world is pretty much like inflamed by Yah's judgment, because we know that the Western civilization will be destroyed eventually by Yahweh's wrath. So I don't know, it's almost as if Luke is almost acting as if almost if he's poking fun of Christians who believe in this stuff and say that it's not a good idea. We shouldn't be. The Western civilization is important. Well, the Western civilization is sinful. It's the new Babylon. So, sort of is making fun of us and making us look like, evil. So, interesting way to think about it. Now, next page is 366 and 367. Alright, let us read here. I began to dream of Chronos. He conceived me to steal something worthwhile, something no hero had ever had the courage to take. When we went on that winter solstice field trip, while the other campers were asleep, I sneaked into the throne room of Zeus and took the Master Vault from his chair. Hades' helmet of darkness as well, I took it. You wouldn't believe how easy it was. The Olympians are so arrogant, they never dreamed someone would dare to steal from them. The security is horrible. I was halfway across New Jersey before I heard the storms rumbling, and I knew they discovered my theft. And now the next section here. Zeus sent his sons and daughters to find the stolen bolt. Artemis, Apollo, my father, Hermes, and it was Ares who caught me. I could have beaten him, but I wasn't careful enough. He disarmed me, took the items of power, threatened to return them to Olympus, and burned me alive. Then Chronos' voice came to me and told me what to say. Listen, that's interesting. I put the idea in Ares' head about a great war between the gods, like in the days of Noah, the original Titan War. And I said all he had to do was to hide the items away for a while and watch the others fight. Ares got a wicked gleam in his eyes, and I knew he was hooked. You let me go, and I returned to Olympus before anyone noticed my absence. Wow. Interesting. The flattery. This is flattery and mind control that Luke used on Ares, which proves more that Ares is probably more human than we think he is. If you watched early on in the video, I explained that in more detail. It's the mind control, and normally it's used by trauma and like as something's like as a consequence of not doing this deed. The trauma mind control is how Satan, Chronos, and Nimrod won poor Luke to join in the first place. So Ares again was manipulated by Satan and Chronos. You can see how subtle Lucifer is. Now next page is 368 and 369. Alright, let's read here. Alright, so you summoned the Hellhound that night in the forest. We had to make Charon think the camp was not safe for you, so he would start your quest. We had to confirm his fears that Hades was after you, and it worked. The flying shoes were cursed, I said. They were supposed to drag me and the backpack into Tartarus, and it would have worked if you'd been wearing them, but you gave them to the satyr, which wasn't part of the plan. Grover messed up everything he touches. Let's listen. Okay, that was an interesting statement. I'm going to read here. It's the plane of fear. So remember when the Hellhound was actually sent in order for Charon to feel that Percy was vulnerable, and he had to make sure that he would disappear from camp in order to spare the lives of the other campers, because he knows Percy's not safe. He's son of Poseidon. The plane of fear and staging the terror of these events, all these events, remember especially the Hellhound attack, was a staged event. It wasn't just by coincidence it happened. It was all false. It's really reminiscent of all these so-called terrorist attacks of when these vans run over people constantly. Those are all staged, and obviously the terrorist dies immediately. It's the same old story. It's the same story, and especially like stories like 9/11 and the Las Vegas shooting. It's all staged, just like this attack that happened to Percy Jackson back at the beginning of the book. See this? It's been played out. It's sort of like parallel in the our world of how it's staged, and then there's also staged events in the Percy universe, which is interesting to point out, and how it's really similar. So the staging of terror and the War of Terror events is the plan and agenda for the Chronides and 303. So that's interesting to consider. Now let's continue reading. Alright, so Luke looked down at the scorpion, which was now sitting on my thigh. You should have died in Tartarus, Percy, but don't worry, I'll leave you with a little friend to set things right. Oh, Percy is destined to go to Tartarus, which is hell. Tartarus is where the fallen angels were bound for 70 generations, and now they're released. Because the 70 generations, if you add it up, it goes from 5000 BC, around that time, before the flood, all the way to the Industrial Revolution. So I thought we had horse and cart, and all of a sudden we have airplanes and automobiles, and are supposedly going to the moon. Where did you think we got all these ideas from? Well, the fallen angels gave us all these ideas and technology. So Tartarus is where they, right now, is where some of them are chained up. Percy Jackson is destined to go there. He even went to the point. He goes down there physically. So in Mark of Athena, I'll cover that. Percy Jackson actually drops into Tartarus, and it's a warning or some sort of like forbearing from God, or just testing out Percy like the hard way, because Percy, of course, is pretty flawed with his generations and his beliefs and his actions. So he's pretty sinful, but Percy, I believe God is testing Percy to toughen up and conditioning him to get ready, because I believe Percy could be saved. and I believe that's so. I think God's setting a plan for Percy Jackson, and if Percy gets saved in Era of 33, that will be brilliant. If Percy's he's just trying to warn for Percy if he's not saved. If he dies without Christ, he will go to hell and torture us, as Chronos has predicted in this book here, because Chronos predicted Percy going to hell. So we'll obviously find out what will happen to Percy in the end in Era of 33. So I actually do not know what might happen to Percy, but I have a feeling he could be saved. I hope he gets saved. Anyways. Alright. Yeah, and it says here. Wait, let me see something. So Percy Jackson. Quickly read here again. Adding addition to the last one here about Percy's destiny to hell. You're being used, Luke. You and Ares don't listen to Chronos. Ares and Luke have been listening to Chronos. You've been used. Luke's voice turned. I've been used. Sorry, messed up. Luke's voice turned shrill. Look at yourself. What has your dad ever done for you? Chronos will rise. You've only delayed his plans. He will cast the Olympians into Tartarus and drive humanity back to the caves. Let's read this. That's just an addition for how Percy and the gods are destined to go to hell, because eventually they will. The Greek gods will go to hell on the day of judgment. It is written in prophecy. Now let's read this here, the last part of this page. Luke smiled. Nice try, Percy, but I'm not Ares. You can't bait me. My lord is waiting, and he's got plenty of quests for me to undertake. Luke? Goodbye, Percy. There's a new golden age coming, and you won't be part of it. Oh, the golden age. This is the golden age. The golden age is Era of 33. It's the new world order. For 7 years, it's going to be the golden age. It's a 7-year tribulation. This is exactly what Halcom Green saw in his visions and in the diary of Luke and Stellan. This just came into my mind just now. It's just amazing. I'm suspecting that Luke read Halcom Green's diary and saw all the prophecies of the end times, the tribulation, the rise of the Antichrist, the microchip, and all that, and the destined, the gods going into hell in the end times. I reckon Luke read it and saw it, and then Chronos told him, "Oh, we can quicken this. We can do this, and we can rule into the golden age of the new world order. We can quicken the plans of the enlightened ones." This is probably why Luke fell into Chronos' hands in the first place, because he read Halcom's diary and had a sudden desire or some lust to fulfill these prophecies on his terms. He didn't go with the flow like God wants it to go, and according to God's timetable. He went to his timetable. Luke wanted to do it his way, and he legioned with Chronos and do it his way, and of course he fails because it's not according to God's timetable. God will let this stuff happen according to his timing, not according to Luke. So Luke tried to rush it and tried to do it his way, but of course in the end he fails and he dies. His life gets extinguished, and he's probably burning in hell right now. Poor Luke. Alright, that's that. Let's go to this is the last one on page 300. Actually, no, I don't need to read anything. I just need to read this thing here for you guys. So pretty much I'm done with the annotations. I just need to read this last summary point here. So that's Percy Jackson and a lightning thief. Exposed. Those are the secrets. But quickly, I've got something here. I'm going to be reading this at the end of every Percy Jackson or Rick Riordan's books episodes. When I do every episode, at the end I'm going to read. And it's something you really need to consider, and it's based on true events. And I've started to analyze people's testimonies, especially ex-Satanists and witches, and have been abused in satanic rituals, and they've always said the same or similar thing. And this is one of the interesting things I discovered, and it made me think about Percy Jackson almost immediately, and something I've noticed from that series. Alright, so People with the bloodlines of the occult are considered to be more powerful. So, the bloodline, obviously we know Percy has the blood of Poseidon, and he's a demigod, so he is one of the demigods who's supposed to, be one of the major heroes and save the day, and part of Camp Half-Blood. The occult watches, as I mentioned, Percy's been watched by these spirits and gods. They watch his every move ever since he was born, because he's a son of Poseidon. The occult watches everyone, and they learn about these individuals who are supposedly have the bloodline, sacred bloodlines. And they watch them and learn all about them until they are old enough to be initiated. So Percy is 12 years old, I believe. He's pretty much old enough, he's old enough to go into Camp Half-Blood and, train to be a demigod. But once we get to the other series, you're going to start seeing a trend here. There's these different ages, they get initiated into these occultic places, like Camp Half-Blood and the House of Life and Valhalla. Once they reach a certain age, they are confronted in some way by these people, these occultists or elitist enlightened ones, or hybrids or Nephilim, demons, whatever, but it's obviously of something of Satan. It's not of God, these people or individuals. So this is what they know. This is a few things that they know for sure. They know more about the person than the actual person does. So they know more things about the person, which is obviously more, it's sort of like they know more things about them than they actually know, and that obviously would trigger things to make them know that these guys are intelligent and you must listen up to them. They say that they are powerful, and it's their destiny to join the Satanic Brotherhood. This happens to Percy Jackson, the Kane Chronicles, Jason in the Heroes of Olympus, Magnus Chase, and more characters in all of the Rick Riordan books. This is witchcraft, initiation into Satanism, and it's making people sensitized into it, and makes them imagine if it might happen to them. So, for example, in Percy's case, he is a demigod, and he's just an average kid. He doesn't even know he's a demigod until all of a sudden he meets a creature called the Furies, and the Furies say to him that he's a thief, and then he must be saved, or get brought to Camp Half-Blood to safety. And they say that he's a demigod. You're a son of Poseidon. It's almost if it's like in Harry Potter when I forget his name, Hagrid comes to Harry and he's like, "You're a wizard, Harry," and he's like something like that. It's the same thing with witchcraft. They go up to these people that have supposed pure or sacred bloodlines. They go up to these people and say, "You are whatever. You are like demigod, or you are Niheri, you are a magician. You are the most. You're going to be the most famous person. You're going to be so successful. You're going to rise up like a star, and you're going to be a god to everyone." This is one of the false promises of Satan back in the Garden of Eden. The 3 promises: you will have knowledge of good and evil, you will be as gods, and you will have immortality. These are the 3 things Satan has, and in some shape or form, these people who work for Satan, they're gonna say these things for flattery, and this is how these innocent people who don't even know what's even happening to them get initiated without even knowing it. It's wicked and it's sinful. So again, this is a trend in Percy Jackson: the initiation or getting joined into a certain group, and it all ends. All ends terribly. I mean, Percy, again, he gets initiated as a demigod, and supposedly he's powerful, and he is wicked and powerful, and he's well known, and just like the Satanists said in these stories I hear, they said, "You're going to be very powerful. You've got good blood, and you must join us." So that's pretty much it. That's episode 2 of the Secrets of the Lightning Thief book. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to stay tuned for more, make sure you subscribe to my channel, and you keep updated, because you will get notifications when you subscribe. And if you enjoyed, just stay tuned for more, because when I do this, I analyze the Percy Jackson books, I discover things that will help people all get wake up from the matrix, and find the true Savior, the true God, which is Jesus Christ. So thank you for watching episode 2 of Truth Pursuit. Next one, episode 3, will be coming soon, and I'll see you later. God bless.